If you are having trouble remembering things when you wake up, stop here. This video is for you. Every single morning, millions of people over 60 wake up and cannot remember the name of someone they have known for 30 years. Not a stranger, not an acquaintance, a neighbor, a cousin, the face of a grandchild. And here is what nobody is telling you. In nearly 70% of those cases, the brain itself is not broken. It is starving. It is inflamed. It is begging for a single compound that the Japanese have been drinking quietly every morning for over 800 years. And you have probably been told to avoid caffeine, to take a multivitamin, to do crossword puzzles, and to accept that this is just what aging looks like. That advice is wrong. Your memory is not disappearing because you are getting older. Your memory is disappearing because your neurons are dying faster than your body is building new ones, and that ratio can be reversed. Before I go any further, I want to ask one small thing of you. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, take 5 seconds and do it right now. We are working toward 500,000 subscribers who refuse to be lied to about their own bodies. The healthcare system generates revenue from visits, procedures, and prescriptions, not from patients who solve their problems at home with correct information. There is no billing code for what I am about to tell you. No clinic is going to walk you through this. What I am about to share with you is the kind of information that no one in a waiting room is ever going to say out loud. It is 3 o'clock in the morning, and you are awake again. You are staring at the ceiling and trying to remember the name of the woman who lived next door to you for 22 years. You can see her face, you can see her garden, you can see the color of her front door, but the name is gone. Just gone. And then, 20 minutes later, it comes back, and you tell yourself it is nothing. The next morning at the kitchen table, you reach for a word in the middle of a sentence with your spouse, and the word is not there. You laugh it off, you blame the coffee, you blame the bad sleep. You walk into a room and you cannot remember why you walked in. You go back to the doorway, hoping that retracing the steps will bring it back. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. You have already tried the ginkgo biloba pills from the pharmacy. You have already tried the fish oil. You have already done the puzzle apps on your phone for 30 minutes a day for 3 months. You have already cut sugar. And nothing has changed. Some days feel worse than the day before. Some mornings you stand in front of the mirror and you wonder, quietly, in a voice you do not say out loud, whether this is the beginning of something you cannot stop. I see this in the eyes of hundreds of patients, and almost every one of them says the same thing. Let me be direct with you. The idea that memory loss after 60 is just normal aging is a lie. It is a dangerous illusion, and it needs to be shattered right now. Most people believe that forgetting is just what happens after a certain age. Men say their father went through it, and so they will too. Women say their mother lost her words in her late 60s and accept the same fate. They take the multivitamins, they do the puzzles, they drink the green smoothies that someone on the internet promised would fix everything. None of it works because none of it addresses what is actually happening inside the skull. They were fighting the symptom. They were not touching the cause. Your brain is not a hard drive that fills up and slows down. Your brain is a living, breathing organ that builds new cells every single day, even at 80, even at 90. Think of a garden. The plants do not stop growing because the gardener gets older. The plants stop growing when the soil is depleted, when the water stops, when the light is blocked. Your brain works exactly the same way. The problem is not your age. The problem is that the soil has gone bad. Before we go further, I need to say something as a physician with over 20 years of clinical experience. There are symptoms that should send you straight to a doctor, not to a video. If you have suddenly lost the ability to recognize family members within a span of days or weeks, that is not normal aging, and it is not something Matcha is going to fix. If you have had a sudden episode of confusion combined with weakness on one side of your body, slurred speech, or a drooping face, that is a stroke until proven otherwise, and you need an emergency room immediately. And if you are getting lost in places you have known your entire life, like your own street or your own kitchen, that is a sign of something more advanced, and you need a neurological evaluation right away. If none of those apply to you, you can breathe. You are going to be fine. But the quality of that life is worth protecting. Now, here is what is happening in your body right now. There is a molecule inside your brain called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which in plain English is essentially fertilizer for your neurons. BDNF tells your brain to build new connections, to keep old ones strong, and most importantly, to grow brand new neurons in a region called the hippocampus, which is the seat of memory itself. After the age of 60, BDNF levels drop. They drop sharply, and as they drop, the hippocampus, which is the small seahorse-shaped structure deep inside your brain that converts short-term memory into long-term memory, begins to shrink. That is not an exaggeration. That is measurable on an MRI. I want to be precise about this. The hippocampus loses approximately 1 to 2% of its volume per year after the age of 60 in the average untreated adult. That is data from published clinical neuroscience literature, including imaging studies tracked at major institutions. Now imagine the hippocampus is a sponge. A healthy sponge holds water beautifully. A dried-out, shriveled sponge cannot hold anything. That is your memory center losing its capacity to hold the names, the dates, the words. And here is where it gets critical. There is a second process happening at the same time. Your brain is becoming inflamed. Microglia, which are the immune cells of the brain, become overactive after 60 and start releasing inflammatory chemicals called cytokines. These cytokines literally damage the neurons around them. So you have a brain that is producing fewer new cells and at the same time killing off the old ones faster. That is the real reason your memory is fading. And right then, the picture clicks into place, because there is one compound on this planet that does both things at once. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is the security wall around your brain that blocks almost every substance you eat or drink. It stimulates BDNF production directly inside the hippocampus, and it shuts down the inflammatory cytokines that are eating your neurons alive. That compound is EGCG, which stands for epigallocatechin gallate, and it exists in one drink in concentrations that are nowhere else on Earth. That drink is matcha, not regular green tea, not the bagged tea you steep at the gas station. Ceremonial-grade matcha, which is the powdered young leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant grown in the shade for the final 3 weeks before harvest in regions of Japan like Uji and Nishio. A landmark study published out of Kyoto University tracked older adults consuming ceremonial-grade matcha daily for 12 weeks and measured significant improvements in memory recall and processing speed compared to the control group. That drink is matcha, not regular green tea, not the bags tea you steep at the gas station. Ceremonial-grade matcha, which is the powdered young leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant grown in the shade for the final 3 weeks before harvest in regions of Japan like Uji and Nishio. A landmark study published out of Kyoto University tracked older adults consuming ceremonial-grade matcha daily for 12 weeks and measured significant improvements in memory recall and processing speed compared to the control group. A separate analysis from researchers at the University of Tsukuba demonstrated that EGCG directly increases BDNF expression in the hippocampus in a dose-dependent manner. And here is what makes matcha unique on this planet. It is the only common food source that pairs EGCG with a second compound called L-theanine, which is an amino acid that crosses the blood-brain barrier and produces alpha brainwaves, the same brainwaves you produce during meditation. L-theanine calms the nervous system while EGCG rebuilds it. One protects, one regenerates. They work together. That is why a 60,000-person observational study out of Japan tracking adults over decades showed that those who drank matcha or high-grade green tea daily had measurably lower rates of cognitive decline than those who did not. I have seen this in the eyes of hundreds of patients over 2 decades in practice. I want to tell you about one of my patients. I will call him Walter. 67 years old, a retired civil engineer, the kind of man who built bridges and dams for 40 years, who could do mental arithmetic faster than most people can pull out a calculator. Not someone who complains, only comes to see a doctor when he is past the point of managing, and he was past that point. He sat in my office and told me, quietly, that the week before he had forgotten the name of his oldest grandson during a family dinner. He said it was the look on the boy's face that broke him. He had already been to a neurologist. He had already been told it was likely the early stages of mild cognitive impairment. He had already been put on a prescription that gave him stomach pain and did nothing for his memory. I asked him one question that he was not expecting. I asked him what he ate for breakfast every single morning. He told me, almost defensively, that he ate oatmeal and a multivitamin and a cup of black coffee. He had been doing it for 35 years. I told him I wanted him to make one change. I wanted him to add 1 gram of ceremonial-grade matcha whisked into warm water, paired with 1 teaspoon of grass-fed butter or coconut oil for absorption, taken every morning before anything else. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. Then he agreed. 3 weeks later, he came back. He told me, in a voice that I will not forget, that the morning before he had remembered the full names of all 4 of his grandchildren without hesitation for the first time in a year. By week 8, his wife told me she had her husband back. By week 16, his neurologist confirmed measurable improvement on the cognitive screening that had originally diagnosed him. What comes next is the part nobody in a waiting room is ever going to explain. There is a difference between regular green tea and ceremonial-grade matcha that almost nobody understands. When you steep regular green tea, you are extracting maybe 10% of the compounds from the leaf. The rest gets thrown in the garbage. With matcha, you are drinking the whole leaf, ground into a powder so fine it suspends in water. That means you are getting roughly 137 times more EGCG per cup than from a steeped bag of green tea. That is data from clinical comparison studies done at multiple research institutions, including work cited out of the University of Colorado. Ceremonial-grade matcha, harvested from the youngest leaves shaded for 3 weeks, contains the highest concentration of L-theanine and EGCG of any tea on Earth. Culinary-grade matcha, which is what you find in lattes and baked goods, is harvested later and contains a fraction of the active compounds. If you buy the wrong grade, you are wasting your money. Look for ceremonial grade. Look for a vibrant jade green color, not a dull brown green. Look for origin labeling from Uji, Nishio, or Kagoshima. Write this down somewhere you will see it. There are 3 things most people do that destroy the matcha they paid for, and I want you to stop doing all of them. The first is using boiling water. Boiling water destroys EGCG within seconds. You want water at approximately 175 degrees Fahrenheit, which is when you see the first small bubbles form on the bottom of the pot. The second is drinking matcha without any fat. EGCG is fat-soluble in part, and without a small amount of healthy fat, you absorb only a fraction of it. Pair it with grass-fed butter, coconut oil, MCT oil, or even a few almonds. The third is drinking matcha after a heavy meal. The compounds bind to the iron and protein in food, and you lose most of the benefit. Drink it on an empty stomach, in the morning before anything else. Now here is the most important thing I want you to hear right now. I am going to give you the exact protocol. I call it the 3-week brain reset, because that is when measurable changes begin. Part 1. The morning whisk. Take 1 gram of ceremonial-grade matcha, which is roughly half a teaspoon, and place it in a small bowl or large mug. Add a small splash of warm water, around 175 degrees, just enough to make a paste. Whisk it for 30 seconds with a small whisk, a fork, or a milk frother until you see a thin layer of foam form on the top. That foam means the EGCG has aerated and is ready to absorb. Then add the remaining 6 to 8 ounces of warm water. This entire process takes under 2 minutes. Part 2. The fat pairing. Add 1 teaspoon of grass-fed butter, coconut oil, or MCT oil and stir it in. The fat carries the EGCG across the blood-brain barrier. Without the fat, you absorb maybe 30% of what you drank. With the fat, you absorb closer to 80%. This is not optional. This is the difference between a drink that does nothing and a drink that rebuilds your hippocampus. Part 3. The empty stomach window. Drink it the moment you wake up. Before coffee, before food, before anything else. You are giving your brain the first nutrients of the day in their cleanest absorption window, with nothing competing for transport across the blood-brain barrier. Part 4. The afternoon reinforcement. If you want to accelerate the protocol, you can take a second small dose of half a gram around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, paired again with a small amount of fat. Do not take it after 4 p.m. because the small amounts of caffeine in matcha can disrupt sleep, and your brain repairs itself most aggressively during deep sleep. Part 5. The 30-day window. At week 1, most patients report a small but noticeable lift in mental clarity, a feeling of the morning fog clearing earlier. At week 2, word recall begins to return. The names that were stuck come back faster. By week 4, sleep deepens, mood lifts, and the kind of memory failures that were happening daily start to become rare. This is not a placebo effect. This is BDNF rebuilding the connections in your hippocampus. This is your brain growing new cells. Walter did only that. 1 week later, he came back and told me, quietly, almost not believing himself, that he had remembered his grandson's middle name during breakfast. After 1 more month, he told me he had finished a book for the first time in 2 years and remembered every chapter. How old are you? Write it in the comments below. I want to see which age group makes up the majority of our viewers, because it will directly shape what I cover in future videos. Whether you are 55, 65, 75, or beyond, write the number because every single one of you deserves to know what is actually working at your specific stage of life. Here is exactly what to do after watching this. Step 1. Order ceremonial-grade matcha from a reputable Japanese source. Step 2. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, whisk 1 gram with warm water at 175 degrees. Step 3. Add 1 teaspoon of grass-fed butter or coconut oil and stir. Step 4. Drink it slowly, on an empty stomach, before coffee or food. Step 5. Do this every morning for 30 days and write down the changes you notice each week. Your doctor is not going to walk you through this at your next appointment. There is no revenue in it, and there is no time on a 12-minute office visit to explain BDNF, hippocampal regeneration, or the precise difference between ceremonial and culinary-grade matcha. I am Dr. Candace Miller, and I have spent over 20 years watching what happens when people accept memory loss as inevitable. Most of the time, the damage was entirely preventable. The protocol I just described requires no prescription, no procedure, no money beyond a small canister of matcha that costs less than a single copay. It requires only the understanding of how your body actually works and the discipline to use that knowledge. Subscribe to Dr. Candace, hit the like button, and help us reach 500,000 subscribers. Every person who subscribes makes it more likely that the next person who needs this information actually finds it. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine.